Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Mathis. I'm the CEO of Epic Advertising. We are a platinum sponsor of the show here. And this little talk is focused on performance marketing and some of the key trends we see in the sector. So that is the topic. I'm going to talk about a few things here. We'll talk about our company, Epic Advertising. We'll talk about performance marketing, what it is. It's like a lot of terms in the industry. It's got a number of euphemisms and meanings. It means different things to different people. What are the trends behind it? We describe it as a current explosion in performance marketing because there's a broad shift that we see and we feel like we're profiting from in the performance space. Does the industry believe it? What we mean by that is really the advertiser side of the equation and the agencies. And what does it mean, broadly speaking? How does the shift in the trend towards performance affect the entire online ad ecosystem? And we'll leave a little bit of time for questions. And this is a pretty small group, so what I'd also encourage you at any point along the way, certainly shout it out if you have a question or stop me. It's pretty informal here. So a little bit about us. First, we are describe ourselves as the global leader in online performance marketing. The way we look at it is there's really only two companies that are larger than us in the sector described as performance. One is ValueClick, and I suppose if you go outside North America, you could say Trade Doubler because our model looks a little bit like Trade Doubler, and then QuinStreet's a little bit bigger than us as well. Otherwise, we're certainly the largest. And within the more specific CPA space, and we'll talk about how that relates to performance marketing overall, we're $100 million larger than the next company. So we're certainly, we think, the largest. And I think that's relevant here because it gives us a good sense of where the trends are and what's going on. As I say, or as we say in the slide, we provide a full suite of performance marketing services to advertisers of various stripes. Those advertisers range from Procter & Gamble to the kind of what we'd call one of the usual suspects in the performance space, and that could be dating like a True.com, or it could be Blockbuster. It's probably a bad example since they're not doing so well. Netflix would be a better example in that category, or a Sirius satellite radio, something like that. We were founded in 2000, so we've been around for a long time. We've gone through a lot of iterations as a company. It's funny, I have colleagues, some of the colleagues join us in the room. We're a very different company than when we first started, and we'll talk a little bit about that because I think that's a big piece of the evolution of performance marketing, and it has a lot to do with sustainability. But if I go back to 2000, the company was founded as Azoogle. Anyone here who's an affiliate is probably aware of Azoogle, and that is still to this day a part of our company. It's just one division of three. But if we go back to that period of time, we basically don't have any of the same people still on board. We don't have the same business practices that we engage in, and that'll be more relevant as we go through this. The publisher base today is about 40,000 publishers globally. That's the 75% of those are in North America, but we're growing the international presence more rapidly than we're growing in North America. We are privately held. We're backed by a large private equity firm called TA Associates and a smaller private equity firm called Stripes Group. We've got offices here in New York. Our headquarters is here in New York. Kind of a joint headquarters in Toronto. It's really where we do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of technology development, creative development, and a number of other things. We also have some business presence up there. Sales office in San Francisco, sales office in London, although the London presence is growing out to be kind of a replica of the entire company. It's just smaller right now. It's 7 people. And we're about to open an office in Chicago and another one in Los Angeles. So actually a little bit south of Los Angeles. So we're growing fairly rapidly. The advertising clients, as we talked about before, range across a variety of vertical categories, some which are well-known within the direct response performance space, some of which are less well-known in the performance space but are better known in the brand advertising space. So let's talk about this question of what online performance marketing is. At this show, there are a lot of people who engage in a subset of performance, which is CPA advertising. For those of you who don't know, and I'm assuming almost everyone here does know, CPA is cost per acquisition or cost per action, depending on how you define it. CPA has a couple of kind of child categories, which sometimes people use as a separate category. Cost per lead would be one. Another one is cost per sale or cost per order, right? But they're all sort of under the umbrella of something where an action has to occur, before a payment is made by the advertiser. A lot of people think of performance that way. ValueClick is an example of a company that defines it a little bit more broadly like we do, which is to say performance is really about relevance. Performance got its start in this kind of direct response realm, and the people who are kind of experts at its in terms of being practitioners in it are people who have a DR background. Direct response, when we talk about that, I'm talking about if you look at the offline model, think about direct mail. Direct mail is a game where you send out a bunch of stuff to a bunch of consumers. You know what your conversion rate is, so to speak, based on, you know, your traffic acquisition cost. In the case of, say, direct mail, it's mailing pieces of direct response type advertising to individual consumers, or it's putting flyers in a Sunday circular. You're able to measure based on all of the distribution that you get, the footprint of distribution you get, you're able to measure the response. And on the basis of that response and the conversion rate, you develop an understanding typically of the lifetime value of your customer. The online version of that is CPA in its various forms, and it's very measurable. You really have a very clear sense, if you're a CPA advertiser, of exactly how much that customer is worth to you when you get a new customer in, assuming you're pretty good at following the lifetime value of your customer. By the way, lifetime value of a customer, for anyone who has a finance background, is nothing more than a discounted cash flow or net present value calculation on the total value of that consumer based across a universe of consumers weighted for churn. The point of all that is that a lot of CPA, to the extent that it's reflective of direct response, is not actually marketing expense. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with as they try to come to grips with what our industry is. Performance marketing in that sense isn't actually marketing at all. It's distribution. It's no different than being Walmart and having shelf space and having someone buy the product on the shelf. And most of the companies that engage in that don't think about it as marketing. For anyone who has a finance or accounting background, you know that marketing is a below-the-line expense. It's discretionary. It's operating expenses. Above the line is the cost of actually doing your business, and that's where CPA typically is accounted for. So that's kind of interesting, because when you look at how that relates to what the CPM folks do, it's a little bit different. CPM folks are the kind of online equivalent of TV or the online equivalent of radio. And I don't mean the infomercial. I mean, a 30-second spot in primetime television with the idea of building brand awareness around your product. What we think, and what ValueClick thinks, and what TradeDoubler thinks, and what a number of other people in the sector think, is performance marketing broadly defined is bigger than the CPA. The CPA is a subset of it. That need for that kind of direct response type of marketing is important. But we also all recognize that there's value in the brand in customer acquisition. Direct response is probably best described as customer acquisition. Whether you're acquiring the lead that the University of Phoenix, for example, turns into a customer, or whether you're actually acquiring the customer for someone to sign up for the Netflix program, for example, whether that's a 2-week free trial or actually a higher bounty paid out for an enrolled or registered customer. That's customer acquisition. Customer acquisition works better when there is branding, and we see that over and over and over again. One of the great examples of that is Video Professor. There's people in this room, I'm going to guess, who are on the affiliate side who've run the Video Professor campaign. Apparently, Video Professor, the company, did a study on brand awareness of the Video Professor brand in North America, and the answer was something like an 85% brand awareness, a spectacularly high brand awareness. What's interesting about that is that Video Professor has never spent $1 in below-the-line marketing expense. Their entire brand awareness around that brand was created through customer acquisition, CPA-type spend, whether it was done on television or whether it was done online or any other channels that they use. That's pretty fascinating, because if you look at the stalwarts of the branded world, the Ad Age 100 type advertisers, you get folks like Procter & Gamble. Everyone knows P&G. P&G has spent over several $1 billion over the lifetime of that company in building brand awareness. And the only reason you build brand awareness is to acquire customers. It's not despite what people from Madison Avenue might have you believe, there is no value to the brand other than acquiring the customer at the end of the day. That seems very obvious until you actually get in front of some of the folks that are considered themselves kind of brand stewards at agencies, and they seem to feel like there's value in creating a brand in and of itself. Of course there isn't, right? The only value of the brand is that it leads to acquiring the customer. So here you have a P&G who's spending hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars over the course of the lifetime and actually building brand awareness and not having a very clear sense of how that tracks to the customers that they acquire. Versus a more CPA-oriented model, consider Video Professor, but you can look at a lot of others, that are acquiring customers, and they know that every dollar of quote-unquote marketing expense is actually a dollar that is a profitable dollar for them to spend if they get it right. So anyone who's running a CPA campaign and runs it effectively understands that the only value they get from that campaign is the value, or at least the most immediate value, I should say, that they get from that campaign is the customer who's joined at that time, and that customer is basically a profitable customer theoretically right up front. So to the extent that you can actually build brand awareness, which leads to further customer acquisition down the line, then you've kind of hit the holy grail. In the offline world, it's not really possible to do that, right? It's hard, at least, to do it. In the online world, that's what we're able to do. We're able to go broad across a massive audience and go deep with each audience in the context of the impressions that we create and then what follows the impression in the form of a landing page. So what we ultimately think, to summarize it all, is that performance marketing is really a hybrid of direct response customer acquisition on the one hand and brand advertising on the other. And one of the things that we've been working with for about 18 months now is an ability to correlate the two. We've got a patent pending on this process that correlates the two. So a client can run a customer acquisition campaign with us and measure the lift that comes from branded advertising, whether they're doing it through us on a CPM basis, which looks more like what you get from a double click, right? Or whether they're able to, or whether they're doing it in an offline modality, and we're able to kind of correlate the two. And the types of advertisers that are attracted to that are advertisers that are maybe different than the typical direct response online advertisers. True.com, for example, is less interested in developing a brand around their company. That may be unfair to True. I haven't talked to those guys about it in more than 12 months. But they're not really interested in building a brand. They're interested in acquiring customers. That's what they care about. Verizon is very interested in the brand, but they're also interested in acquiring customers for the Fios service, for their fiber optic service. So there you have a great example of a brand that has all the needs of a brand. They don't want to be adjacent to awful content. They don't want to be connected with adware or spam or all the sort of bad things that can take place in the online sector. And at the same time, so they have those quality concerns that that a Procter & Gamble would have, but they're looking for a CPA type response over a campaign. And those are, we think, the future of the way the industry is shifting, and a very large trend, and has a lot to do with why we're doing well as a company this year. So I think I probably already talked about all of these, but this is the trends itself. The trends, when we sit down and talk to a private equity player or an analyst from Wall Street, these are the types of trends that we talk about. We talk about the fact that, first of all, there's this big shift. It's a permanent shift, we think, of offline dollars following online dollars. Everyone in this room is well aware of that. In addition to that, there's a shift within the internet industry itself from brand spend to more sophisticated performance type models. If you sit where we sit, and there's a handful of other companies that sit in that space, that's pretty good. If you sit where most of you guys sit in the audience, whereas your affiliates, that's also very good because you're the ones who specialize in this stuff and make it work. Our job is to make you guys successful, basically, and if you're successful, we're successful. And so far, that's working pretty well. And there's other reasons why that shift is continuing. The shift towards being able to measure the effectiveness of the ad spend. Very easy to do in a CPA type model, even easy to do, or easier to do, in that broader definition of what performance marketing is. Of course, surfing speeds are increasing, the click traffic is increasing overall, usage is increasing, broadband penetration is increasing. What it means for us is that while it's not a recession-proof industry, it's certainly recession-resistant from where we sit. And there's also probably a lot of people in this room who are also profiting from the fact that within the performance sector, a key trend which is helping a lot of us is the decline in pricing at the publisher level on the CPM basis in particular. CPC is a little bit too, but especially CPM. And that's fascinating because, up until recently, there's two kind of schools of thought on this. We all know CPM rates are down, right? In our experience, seeing it across the universe that we see, we think that in the mid-tail region, they've been about 70% down, about 50% down long tail, somewhere between 40 and 50% down on premium. Tough to make those generalizations because all inventory is different. But if you're in the display business, if you're a display media buyer in this room or you're a publisher on the display side, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And what that's driven by is the Ad Age 100 type advertisers have spent a lot less on pure brand awareness type campaigns. It's a supply and demand function. As they've spent less, the CPM rates have gone down. We noticed the shift dramatically on January 1st of this year. And it's interesting because I just had a question from my board about that. And they said, you know, why did your numbers go up so dramatically as of January 1st? And the answer for that is that most folks, whether they're advertisers or agencies spending on a CPM basis, looking just for brand awareness impressions, are spend typically by the quarter, or they do spot buys, or they'll do upfronts of one sort or another. But there's budgets that they're spending, right? And when the budget ends, then it's over. And a lot of the budgets that were committed to for fourth quarter spending of 2008 ended on December 31st. So CPM rates went way down as of January 1st, which put anybody who was in the business of buying CPM inventory to back it out to a CPA in a very strong position. And that has a lot to do with why the industry, why the performance space in particular has done well. And then the question out of that is, well, what happens with the future? Epic will grow 80% this year relative to 2008. We'll cross the $200 million threshold for the first time. What happens when CPM prices go back up, which is one of the things everybody wonders? I don't have an answer to that. But what I do think is that there's two ways of looking at it. One is we had this ad recession. And as a result of that ad recession, prices have collapsed. As a result of prices collapse, and that's total supply and demand. And as soon as the demand for ad dollars or for ad inventory comes back up, prices will go back up. That may be true, and we think probably it is a little bit true. But there's another argument which says that what we've seen historically, especially in 2006 and 2007, was an asset bubble, just like in any other industry where there have been asset bubbles, real estate, finance, credit default swaps, you name it. We've seen an asset bubble in the 2006, 2007 period, a little bit 2005. And anyone who's been in this industry for any amount of time remembers back when in 2004, 2005, and early 06, it wasn't that hard to make CPM campaigns convert to a CPA. In other words, you could do CPA advertising, you could buy inventory for Blockbuster, and you could do it on a CPM basis across Yahoo and other major sites, and actually buy it at a price which justified you to back out to a CPA that was profitable. That ceased to be possible with rare exception for that 2-year period, 2.5-year period. We think to the extent that it was an asset bubble, driven by the fact that the Ad Age 100 advertisers were only comfortable with a small subset of inventory on the web, that period is over. And although prices will probably come back a little bit, we don't think they'll come back in any way at the level that we saw in that period of time. In the first half of 2008, WebMD charged $70 CPMs for a front page impression. They had the record for having the highest impressions. You can imagine how that doesn't work on a CPA basis, right? If you get a $14 payout and you're trying to buy $70 inventory, it's not going to work. You can make $3 inventory work, or $2 inventory, or 50-cent inventory, but you can't make $70 inventory work. We think that it's been a secular shift. It's a long-term shift that's taken place. And we'll see some inflation in CPA or CPM pricing, but nothing like we saw back in that period of time. And to the extent that there is price inflation on the CPM side, it'll take place in the premium inventory, which is mostly where performance marketing shies away from in any case because of the expensiveness of it. I seem to be talking about one slide. My conversation is about one slide ahead, so I should probably just skip right on through. Yeah, I think basically this is saying it's a great time for being in performance marketing, which I've just spent 10 minutes talking about. So does the industry believe the hype? If you're in this room and you're focused on performance advertising, you do, because you've seen it, or most of you have seen it. We did a survey amongst 2 classes of people. We actually targeted people in our industry. When I say our industry, I mean the online industry overall, not just performance. And we also reached out to a lot of offline agencies and folks, and online agencies, Digitas, folks like that, Razorfish. And what we found, what the stats on the page all boil down to is everyone believes performance is the wave of the future. A lot of people don't know what it means still, but they believe it's the wave of the future. Another thing that is often a definition that people struggle with is an affiliate. Just for fun, how many people would define themselves as an affiliate in the room? Raise your hands. Okay. Does anyone define themselves as a publisher in the room? As opposed to, okay, so we have some publishers. So a lot of people out of the industry have no idea what the difference is between the two. In their minds, an affiliate and a publisher are synonymous, and they're not, right? At least they're not by our definition internally. The way we define it at Epic is that an affiliate is fundamentally a media buyer, whether that media is CPC, search, whether that media is display, or whether that media is email or some subset of those three. Those are the three primary sources of traffic. A publisher is somebody who has a site and they put content on the site, right? And that's the primary reason they exist. What's interesting is that 3 years ago, those were very distinct categories. I either had a website and I had a content on my website and advertisements ran on my website, or I was a third-party media buyer. So I was kind of in the ecosystem somewhere between the publisher and the network buying inventory on behalf of an advertiser from the network. And I'll give you a great example, and we still have to this day clear examples of both in our universe. We have one of our better affiliates in terms of producing volume for us back in late Q1 and early Q2 was a group of 5 media buyers who worked for Yahoo who were laid off by Yahoo. And that's what they used to do. They did media buying for Yahoo, and all of a sudden they were unemployed. So they banded together, they formed a company, they had deep relationships from the display media buying side. They had no ability to go out and sell an advertiser, so they registered with us as an affiliate. We approved them into our universe. They became an affiliate for us. They were basically taking ads from us, traffic from third parties, putting it together and making a killing in the process. That's a pure affiliate. Pure publisher, someone who has a blog. Most of our publishers end up being fairly long tail and small. Someone who's got a blog, they're posting content, maybe they've got a site, a college humor site, they're fanatical hockey fans, and they've built a site focused on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's why they're in the business. They want to publish content. They want to make money, but primarily what they want to do is publish content. What we've seen evolve over the last 24 months is this hybrid, and it's bigger and bigger as a part of our universe all the time, which is either someone started on one side or the other, but they've become combinations of the two. It makes it hard for us technically because we've got to try to define where someone sits because we manage our ad network display piece and our affiliate network as two separate entities, right? So it's really hard to figure out is someone in one or someone in the other. The reality is we've got a lot of people who are now in both. And maybe they started as affiliate media buyers, and they were doing search as well as display buying. And they realized, wait a second, if I'm doing keyword bidding, driving traffic to a bridge page or a landing page that's my URL, and then I'm driving traffic from that URL onto a particular advertiser site, why not have a landing page that can drive traffic to more than one advertiser? In other words, create a persistent URL, not just something that lives only for the length of a campaign. So we'd find people, for example, who started with us were buying terms on Google to drive traffic to a Blockbuster campaign and realizing I could also sell that traffic to Netflix. Why stop at Blockbuster? I can sell that traffic to Sirius Satellite Radio because often the same people interested in Blockbuster are interested in Sirius Satellite Radio. And then they also realized if I have more content on my site, it actually might drive organic traffic, or I might get a better quality score from Google. So all of a sudden, we saw these publishers, or affiliates, I should say, evolve from being thin landing pages, on behalf of a particular campaign, into being 25, 30-page, 100-page domains. Not the richest content in the world. They weren't passionate about hockey necessarily, but maybe they created a vertical presence around entertainment products. The examples I'm using are from real examples. And so they've got a top-level domain that has lots and lots of pages, and they're driving organic traffic. And now they can run a banner on an ad tag rotator and convert that. So all of a sudden, they're able to monetize the inventory that they've created much more robustly than they did back when they were just a keyword buyer. I don't mean just a keyword buyer pejoratively. Some of the people who are just keyword buyers have amazing technologies to be able to do the PPC game. But it's another way of monetizing that asset. We've seen the same thing from the other side of the fence. We've seen people who were and I'll use an actual example from our universe, fanatical hockey fans, right, who went from just having a content site that they had to figure out how to monetize because it was taking more and more of their life, and they had to quit their day job. So the person I'm thinking of, which is a Toronto Maple Leaf site, which was based out of Toronto, was working, I think they were working in a coffee shop, and they were a graduate student. They finally had to quit so that they could keep this site going because it was taking more and more of their time, and they were getting more and more unique visitors. And they started realizing, maybe I can have an embedded page structured as a landing page, because you know what? There happens to be a lot of people who are interested in renewing their auto insurance who are coming through my site. So I could drive traffic right there, I can deep link right to the embedded page and monetize them on a CPA basis, just as well as I can sell CPM banner type inventory across the front page, across the top of my home page. So that kind of interesting fusion that's taking place is really having a larger impact on the industry than most people realize. So what does it mean for everybody in the ecosystem? I think if you're in the performance ecosystem, it means great things. You know, there's going to be more and more emphasis, and we're seeing it all the time with major agencies, for example, looking to be able to run campaigns on a performance basis, whether that's performance broadly defined. You know, I'm Procter & Gamble, I'm working through my agency Starcom, and I want to run a performance campaign on the, you know, that's a CPM priced campaign, which I'm going to be looking to measure the effectiveness in terms of being able to reach a targeted demographic. Or whether that's Verizon saying, I want to acquire customers for my fiber optic service, but by the way, I know that the 20 years that the Verizon brand has existed has some value, and I want to be able to measure the effectiveness of that value on my customer acquisition campaign. I think what it means for the publishers and affiliates of the universe, the opportunity is particularly strong to get out there. When we look at you know, whether someone's a publisher or affiliate as part of our universe. And by the way, we go to market with 3 products. We have a search agency, we've got an affiliate network, and we've got an ad network. And as I said, there's broad overlap between those. And in fact, the way they work the best is when you're able to pull it all together and draw inference, reference, relevance out of that entire picture. And therefore, it's all about the data, by the way. But in any case, we have very large players who are part of that ecosystem, you know, quote unquote affiliates that in fact are wholesale other networks with a ComScore top 10 rank. And we work with very closely, and it's a really deep business development relationship. All the way down to, you know, people who are still in high school and have figured out some way of doing PPC that no one else has figured out yet and do very well in terms of being able to generate traffic and volume on behalf of an advertiser. I think whether you're on one end of that spectrum or the other, or somewhere in the middle, which is where most people are, obviously, it's a tremendous area of opportunity. And the way we look at the affiliate population in particular is it's a source of innovation. It's the zone of innovation in the sector. So, you know, a lot of the people we work with who are registered as affiliates with us would never come and work for a company like us. You know, we're kind of corporate, you know, as much as we try to de-emphasize that as much as we can. But at the end of the day, as entrepreneurial as I think we are, you know, when you get to the point of 150 people and $200 million revenue, you know, and the prospect of being a public company or what have you, you got to run things a little differently than when you were 10 people, right? So a lot of the affiliates who work with us have no interest in ever being a part of a universe like that. But they can still work with us as a third-party affiliate, and sometimes they can be extremely creative and innovative when it comes to driving traffic. Now there's a flip side to that innovation. We love affiliates that are innovative. We do not like affiliates that are innovative as in they break the rules, right? And this is a critical point of differentiation, we think, between those who are sustainable in this industry. There's some private companies, there's some public companies, and those that are fly-by-night players. It's interesting. I was actually hired at the company originally as the chief compliance officer before I became CEO. I was brought in by TA Associates, which is a large private equity firm based out of Menlo Park in Boston. They invested in Azoogle in 2005 based on the growth of Azoogle. At the time, Azoogle was doing phenomenally well. It was one of the first private equity transactions in the performance space. And they came in, made the investment, and I was hired in part because I had had a forensic background at a prior job. So my job was primarily chief operating officer, but also the mandate from TA was, hey, we think this performance marketing stuff is great stuff, but there's been the way the industry is run so far, and this was right as of 2004, late 2004, early 2005, the way the industry is run so far is kind of a hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil approach. If you are a man in the middle, if you were a person in the middle, and you were connecting advertisers to affiliates, you didn't really care what people did on either side of the fence as long as you had good volume. And we were surprised to find that once you started caring about that, it changed everything. And when I talked in the very beginning of the presentation about the fact that the company we were and the company we are right now are probably two very different things, that drove more of that change than anything else that we did. We've worked on ad serving and optimization technology. We bought a company that does keyword discovery and bid management. We've put that all together with a common data platform. We draw great relevance out of that data platform and do advanced statistical analysis. We hired a professor from Berkeley who's a stats head who's built a team that does that kind of stuff. All of that kind of pales in comparison to the changes that were created by adopting the compliance footing. What we found, actually a little bit of a war story with it, but going back to 2005, the first thing we tackled, we had affiliates doing any kind of traffic you can imagine. Email traffic, adware traffic. It was called contextual back then, but and you'll still find people who call it contextual today, but it's adware, right? It's any time in the industry, by the way, if you're kind of a newbie to the industry, anytime someone has to use a euphemism to change the practice of what they're doing, that's a sign. It's like insurance salesmen who call themselves financial advisors, or garbage men who call themselves sanitation engineers. And you see it over and over again. Let me think of some examples. Incentive marketing became co-reg, which became performance lead generation. Spam was called high volume email deployment by someone fairly well known in the industry. Contextual is not really contextual, it's adware, which is a euphemism for dropping a program onto your computer that steals traffic from Google. You can go through it over and over again. And that's a warning sign anytime you see someone who changes the name of something, except a company. And we'll exempt ourselves from that since we started as a Zoogle and we're now Epic. So apart from that, all the rest of it be suspicious of. But anyway, so we started with email. And what we basically said was, okay, who's the best practice in email in the world? And at that time, naively, we thought Spamhaus. So we reached out to Spamhaus and developed a relationship, which is not easy to do if anyone's ever had any dealings with Spamhaus. It's this shadowy organization of nonprofit folks in England. But nonetheless, we actually successfully connected. We got a kind of measure of what they thought was best practices. We modified it a little bit because we didn't think it was their email practices basically amounted to, you can send an email to your friend maybe if they know you really well. Otherwise, forget about it. All commercial email in their mind was wrong. So we don't think that's true. But it was better or a higher standard than what CAN-SPAM was. We adopted this standard, and our email traffic went away. It went from being 60% of our business to 0% of our business. And I can tell you that was a tough board meeting I had to justify how I had just in one fell swoop destroyed 60% of the revenue of the company. And at the time, the flack we got was, you guys, you're killing yourself. You'll never survive this. We weren't a big company at the time relative to some of the peers in the industry. You're never going to survive this. Flash forward 4 years, we're now $100 million larger than the nearest CPA player, and that's all about sustainability. We created sustainable practices. Another interesting little bit from that, one of the folks who I will not name, who said to us, you're going to kill yourselves by doing this, was a company there. A lot of the email affiliates we were working with who were engaged in not, I would describe it as not sustainable email marketing practices. A lot of those email affiliates went over to this other company. At the end of 2006, they sent us a bottle of Dom Perignon to say, thank you for building our business. That company is now defunct, essentially. So, one of the takeaways from the entire sort of thing, and we moved on, by the way, from email to adware to just general marketing practices in a range of areas, whether that's ringtones and mobile, to some other things. We had to do a lot of work over many years to kind of get that right. But the upshot to it all is that we're thriving and doing well, and we pursue best marketing practices. And everyone who we've encountered over the course of the 4 years I've been at the company who sort of said, hey, it's all about as much money as I can make today and the volume I can generate today, have kind of long gone. No, some of those people are long gone because they were small affiliates who made a lot of money and have retired to a beach. More power to them. For us, we're not in that business. We're in the business of trying to create a sustainable company, which ultimately looks a lot like ValueClick as a public company, hopefully a lot better than the way ValueClick runs their company. No offense to ValueClick, but we think that there's an opportunity there for players in our sector to kind of come forward and give them a real run for their money. We think that technology is a huge piece of it. The difference between being a broker and having a value-added intermediary, if you will, is technology and the compliance piece, but that goes without saying, right? So you start with the compliance piece, which is basically, put differently, you're going to operate legally, right? And so if you assume that that's right up front, you're not going to operate in any way which can be construed by any organization, regulatory agency, otherwise is illegal. That's kind of the price of admission from our perspective. You're not going to take a company public that's not doing that. Or by the way, I'll flip back. There are plenty of companies, several that I can think of, that are public that have destroyed a tremendous amount of shareholder value because they weren't doing the right thing. And I'll pick on my friends at ValueClick a little bit. And I don't think the executive team knew what they were getting into. But when they made the Web Clients acquisition in 2005, some of you know what I'm talking about. Web Clients was a company that engaged in co-reg, right? That's the euphemism. What they really did was put up banners that said, get a free iPod. And then you ended up lost in a path of 100 or 200 or an infinite number of landing pages where you had to fill out offers. And you never got the iPod, by the way. Or if you did, you spent about $1,000 a month in signing up for other programs to get it. So it wasn't quite free, right? When ValueClick bought Web Clients, I don't think they knew what they were buying. But I can tell you that when their market cap went from $2 billion to about $1 billion, and the single biggest thing that happened in that time frame was that the analyst community picked up on the FTC investigation around that. That gives you some sense of how doing the wrong thing can be quite costly. In that case, to the tune of about $1 billion. And I guarantee you, Web Clients has not generated $1 billion of revenue for ValueClick or profiting for ValueClick along the way. So we accept that as the price of admission. So get past that, then the technology and the targeting piece matters a great deal. And that's really all about data, because if you don't get that piece right, then you're a non-value-added intermediary. And the internet is the greatest force of disintermediation known in business history. So if all you are is a broker sitting in the middle, putting A plus B together and trying to make a business out of that, you will eventually be out of business. It is inevitable. It may not be this year, but it is inevitable. You must have some capability to be able to provide a return on investment for the advertiser, and that capability must be better than, I happen to know some affiliates that the advertiser doesn't know, right? Which is how some people in this industry operate. And finally, flipping it around to where we all are in this room and where we kind of see our role as a company, we are on the cusp of performance marketing being broadly adopted by large, legitimate players. One of the things that holds them back is point number one above, and to a lesser extent, point number two. It's our job not just to be compliant players, not just to have something that we bring to the table if you sit in the middle like we do, where we're connecting advertisers to affiliates or to traffic because we're doing something smart, we're not just brokering deals. But then there's the education piece, which is we have to let people know. And we've got to be evangelists for this, because of the $25 billion or so of online ad spend, we, as an ecosystem, probably account for about 2 to 3 billion of it. Performance overall is slightly more than 50%, but that includes...
Yeah, I was in finance for many years, and that crashed, and I got into this business. And what I do best is sales, and what I want to do is to sell companies and then put together an offer and then pitch it to the networks. So in the next year, 2 years, what kind of medium-range companies that I could approach as a one-man shop, not the Fortune 500s, would you suggest I go after that would be good for this?
They're sort of, there are the Fortune 500s, and they've already got their kind of, that's a tough nut to crack, right? Because they're definitely interested and they're coming into our sector, but so if you had the chance to crack one of those on a one-off basis, that'd be interesting. But I think where there's opportunity today is the kind of guthy ranker wannabes, right? There's a lot of folks coming into the universe that are looking at taking what in effect are the Billy Mays type products, direct response type products, and you see them advertising obviously in infomercials. And by the way, that's a great example the dynamics that are affecting us as well as the broader industry. There's, the fact that you can get a 30-second spot for an infomercial on CNBC during the day was not possible 12 months ago. It's because, CPM rates, which is how television is sold as well, has declined so dramatically that you can get those 30-second spots in a way that you just couldn't in the past. How much is it now? I don't buy television. I know it's cheap enough. Sorry?
When it is available, you're saying versus 12 months ago, you said?
Yeah, it's 12 months ago, CNBC would have been selling, Merrill Lynch and Schwab for its 30-second spots during the working day. Now they're selling, Billy Mays, rest in peace, Billy Mays is still appearing, right, in a lot of ads. His company is still running with him. As Seen on TV is another company that operates in that sector. There's a couple of agencies. Red Ventures is another one. Transact is another one. These are agencies that are trying to do this kind of bring the offline to online DR stuff. And we do that too, but we like to find agencies, someone like yourself, who can kind of go out and troll the universe for the right products that will work in an online. Again, whether that's a kind of cost per action, cost per order, or whether it's cost per lead, depends on the situation. And it's a little bit more of a wild, wild west game because there's people who are operating in that space who are, pushing things that are not sustainable, and you have to make sure you steer away from those guys. And you'll be able to tell, right? You can tell when you meet with someone, and you're kind of wondering, where their prison tattoos are. You know that. That's not the right guy probably to be working with. But there's plenty of people who are pushing good products that are looking to get good online distribution. They just have never done it before. They've made their living in the offline world. And it's something that I think, interestingly enough, is as much as it's true that the internet is great for CPA and for this kind of advertising, there's a ton of offline advertisers that are more kind of direct response type advertisers that haven't woken up to it yet. And we find that's, when we think about the growth that we experienced this year, it's primarily driven by those folks, more than it is Verizon spending more money with us. That was more of the 2008 story for us. Then even the Ad Age 100 guys who were spending on a CPA basis started scaling back in 2009. But along the way came, the Billy Mazes of the world, the ShamWows, the stuff that's kind of direct response infomercial type stuff. That does very well in the current economic environment for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Sir?
I probably missed the answer to that last question. One of the shops that's here today is as seen on PC, and they moved stuff from commercials, TV commercials to the online space. And
They're full disclosure, they're clients of ours.
Okay. Are they the only people who do that?
No, I think there's more and more that are starting to, but as seen on PC, and I'm not even sure whether they're related to as seen on TV.
No, they're not.
I think they're not, right?
No.
I know we work with both, but it's, there's, we'll think of who else. There's folks that, Red Ventures is one that we know pretty well and work with.
Red Ventures?
Red Ventures.
R-E-D?
R-E-D, yeah, Ventures. They tend to be a little bit more focused on bigger brands, bringing kind of bigger brands online on a DR basis. But that skill set of taking someone who's an offline thing, some offline thing that's looking for customer acquisition, either a well-known brand or a direct response brand, so to speak, to bring it online.
Follow up on that. We had a group here doing call, and a very good adjunct to Ad Seen on PC would be a call program where you line up the radio programming with the ad, with the paper call program. The guys who did the call figured that the people who do the radio program would within a year come in as they would come in as not affiliates but as
Kind of an agency partner. Or,
And, but a very good way for your shop to monetize that movie. And it's really, you really just Johnny on the spot. It would be to do something parallel with the radio space with that scene on PC.
it's interesting.
Link share,
Link share, is it?
Yep. Whatever the back end of it is.
And it's funny because LinkShare, our chief information officer was the CIO of LinkShare, so we sort of feel like we ripped out from them anything that was of value on their team, took it into our house, our shop. But yeah, no, look, they're a competitor, LinkShare, so we're in that same kind of space. I think your broader point is the more integrated a campaign can be across multiple distribution channels, the stronger you can ultimately be. And we're very, very big believers in that. And pay-per-call is a part of that, has a role. And at the end of the day, all of marketing is ultimately about trying to convert a consumer into, a particular action. The Red Ventures guys I was just talking about, probably their single biggest value add is call centers. They've got lots of call centers. It's a really scientific approach to ultimately figuring out how to convert a customer, how much time to spend on the phone with them, and they rely on folks like us to get that person in the front door, and then they work on the upsell to get that person to convert on behalf of ADT or any of a number of other sort of customer acquisition focused product lines. The more integrated you can make it, the better off it is. Dollar for dollar, we think that if someone's got $1 million to spend in a quarter, then the $1 million to spend should be spent across 5 different distribution channels, including offline, as opposed to all in display or all in search or all in email or all on TV. The more integrated you make it and you bring all those pieces together, the better off you are. So I think with that, I'm sorry, all right, one more. Go ahead.
On that media mix, what percentage breakout would you,
Is there an ideal breakout? There isn't. It really depends on the campaign. We start basically from a 50-50 thesis. So, and for us, it's all just search and display. So we'll start on that 50-50 basis. Over time, you'll see certain campaigns rely a little bit more on inferred intent, in which case they become a little bit more search-oriented. And others are a little bit better done as kind of display for any of about 5 different reasons. But because we don't know that mix up front, in fact, it's actually a great question in terms of where we evolve next. One of the things we're working on is whether we've got enough data now to do kind of a regression analysis, to do a little bit of predictive capability based on, hey, this campaign looks a lot like this one. So what did it look like, and are we able to correlate them that way?
We actually go back to we've seen that their cost per acquisition and being where we track is cheaper for us to run because they know we travel station.
That's interesting.
So that's what we don't have.
So you kind of drive it from the other side. As long as you're making the profit, right? Then it's all about optimization after the fact. Well, this is great. Thanks a lot, everybody. And I'll just stay up here. So